Ciao, Eva.
Hello.
How are
Ciao,
you?
Alberto. Hi, I'm
Hey,
very good. How are you?
excellent. It's good to see you, Eva. You look great. Thank you very much for everything. And we also have our special guest online, but we will wait for him to be ready with us. Okay, good. This is webinar number one. Okay, and we have a series of webinar where we're gonna talk on how we're gonna manage the opportunities to enter China, because you see, what I do is I help companies to define their strategies to enter the Chinese market. And the first question I've got is, oh, Alberto, yes, we got this product, and we want a WeChat account. We want to be listed on Baidu, and we already translated our website in Chinese, okay, but we don't see any results, okay. Can you help us? Okay, so this is the basic questions I get tens and tens of time every day, and somehow I said, okay, we better go, step by step. And this is the reason why talking to you, Eva, we and being each other, expats in China for so long. You have been in China for 15 years, and I've been in China for I don't want to say it, but it's since 1988. Okay, so you make the math, and I've seen everything possible. So what today we're gonna define, is there an opportunity to enter the Chinese market, or is China the opportunity that we're still missing? And this is exactly where we want to focus and what we want to do. Now, to be able to handle this situation, we need to go through a little bit of details. But first, Eva, please introduce yourself.
So, hello, everyone. Hello, world. Thank you, Alberto. It's a pleasure to work with you after so many years of talking about let's do something together, and actually sharing our first experience of being foreigners in China. I knew it's going to happen one day, so I'm really excited that this is happening now. My name is Eva Sladic-Ketso. I am collaboration designer and virtual facilitator. I help people work better together online using virtual collaboration tools and right methods. So I'm here to help Alberto collect the knowledge from different perspectives in real time. So I invite you to join us in our Miro board, a tool, virtual collaboration tool that we're going to use today to collect all of your thoughts, ideas, and questions about what Alberto is going to share about China, which is his wisdom, his knowledge, his experience, as well as our guest, Michael, who's going to join us and share his real-time experiences from research in China market. So excellent. I'm going to guide you through the Miro board and looking forward to see you there as well.
All right. Would you like to share the screen with us?
Of course. Let's do that.
Yeah. Here we go. Okay. So in the meantime, what the process is when entering China? Okay. So China is a huge place. China is really big by geography, by cultures, by peoples, by everything that we are basically doing with the Chinese market, okay? And the Chinese people are so different one to another. I mean, you could easily compare China to Europe in terms of different cultures, way of speaking, slangs, experiences, and everything that goes behind. So China is not one China. And when you think about China, you need to focus that there may be your position there, and there may be the opportunity for you to identify your business goal and strategy in the country. But of course, you cannot be alone and think that whatever made you successful in the West will make you successful in China. Things goes on a parallel line. Basically, there is this common misunderstanding that since you have a famous brand in Europe or in America or in Africa or in Australia, okay, the same condition that brought you to success in your own country or abroad in Western cultures, okay, using the same tools can make you have or score the same results. Now, once we understand that things work differently in China, we will definitely understand also that there must be something else that we can do. It's not a lose-lose situation. It has to be a win-win situation. And to be a win-win situation, it all first starts with the right thinking and with the right objective. And of course, for anybody who goes now into the who approach the market, okay, having and finding their niche, it means to sometimes develop the own products and make it China accessible. This is something very important that has to be fully understood. And I talk about this for both consumer products and B2B products. In particular, B2B, they really need to have a different shift in mindset and mentality, because everything in China starts from the consumer. Even if your product is making painting devices, spraying gun, or stuff like that, you need to understand the experience of the consumer. But in that specific case, it can be the buyer of a product which has been sprayed with your paint or with your guns, okay? And then starting from there, then you do have to have a reverse engineering to go on and find your opportunity to collaborate and to cooperate with your target customers. Eva, are you ready with a screen?
I'm ready with the screen. Could you please share the Miro board link?
Sure. Here we go.
So please join us on the Miro board.
Okay. Yes. In the meantime, would you like to tell us what...
Yes, we have people here joining us. That's very, very good.
Good.
I'm going to bring everyone to me so you can see where we are. We are moving to the slide number 1.
Wow, beautiful.
So here, the dear guests, please, while Alberto is talking, to the slides on the left side, you have sticky notes to write your questions, thoughts, and ideas. And you can simply zoom in by pinching in your screen and double-clicking on the note and writing your thought, idea, or question on the Miro board.
Excellent. This is good. All right. Okay. So what we're going to do now is that in the meantime that you formulate your questions and your thoughts or your ideas that we will elaborate in a second phase, we will also go through what was for me China as an opportunity. Back in 1988, I was at the edge of, I was managing a small department, but very much advanced in terms of technology, where the products I was developing were missing of some hardwares, and those hardware was not available, not in Europe, not in America, but everything that was similar to what I was looking for, it was definitely available from the country where the product were made. So I told my boss at that time, I said, listen, boss, there is this sticker on each product we imported. It was computer products at the time, and it all says made in Taiwan ROC. I don't know what ROC stands for, but I know Taiwan is an island far away in the Far East. So can I go over and check? And he said, okay, you're free to go. Just take and go. So I took my flight back to, back then, it took me a very long time, basically, to reach Taiwan. I had to fly to Zurich first, and then from Zurich, the flight was canceled, and then I had to go back to London. Then from London, I had to stop by in Hong Kong to get my visa. And then when I arrived in Taiwan at that time, I didn't know what to expect. The only things I knew, it was late in the night, over midnight, and I didn't know where I was going to sleep. So I had to find a hotel, because at that time, remember, there was no internet, no mobile phones, no whatever, only telephones, and fax machine was the most advanced things. And so I get out of a passport control. I collected my luggages, and once I entered the lobby, I was expecting to find a tourist board or something where I could most probably find the answer to my questions. But instead, I was basically assaulted by 10, 20, 30 different people with papers in their hand. And they were like, yeah, this, take it, this, take this. Yeah, yeah. And I was kind of shocked. The first impact, the cultural shock was just a crash for me. I was like, what the hell is going on? Only then I realized, after asking them to step back, I realized that those paper flyers were depliants, were catalogs of products that they were trying to sell. So someone had some gear for the bicycle, some other one had some mechanic machine, and some other had more easily, computer products, computer cards. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I want to talk to you. I want to talk to you. I want to talk to you. And I immediately understood that there was a complete different world in front of me. And instead of going and looking into what I at that time or used to call the yellow pages, to find some business name, I was able to sort all of the information directly there at the lobby of the airport. And obviously, these people were not the owners of a company. They were, whole people just sent there to have a petty cash for them. But it was so interesting to see that they were there to serve me. They were there to give me a service which was so important for me and so essential for what I was looking for, that within an hour, I was able to collect all of the information of a company that I had to see, and I could focus the day after in just going to see the factories and sorting out the products that I was looking for. Now, obviously, I was very lucky. And obviously, this changed completely my shift in my head on how I had to focus and think and organize things within my China dream. And it was Taiwan. But, a few months later, I got back. I decided to move to Taiwan. And then there was these things going on. First of all, I couldn't stay in Taiwan for too long. My visa was expiring every 30 days. And so every 30 days, I had to go out of the country. And the easiest place were obviously Hong Kong. So I was flying Taipei to Hong Kong, getting my visa renewed, and in the meantime, organizing other visits with other suppliers. These things helped me to basically organize the whole process of the suppliers. And many suppliers in Hong Kong, they had the factory in Shenzhen. And so starting from 1993, 94, many suppliers from Taiwan, they moved their factory facilities to Shenzhen area. So basically Shenzhen became immediately the place where I had to be. And still, it wasn't the China I used to know, because obviously Taipei was a little bit more modern than China at that time, but it was still, easier to get around. Meanwhile, if we were going to have the experience in China, in Shenzhen itself, all the people coming to Shenzhen, they were coming from all around the country. And some of them were selling stuff on the street, some other were doing taxi drivers without knowing the place. And they were, every time I had an address, a business card, or something wrote in a post-it, and I was giving it away and say, okay, take me here. I didn't know where to, I didn't know how to reach those places. So you understand that this situation was so difficult for me that I had always to figure out things. Obviously, I was lucky enough to being able to practice Chinese and to be able to speak Chinese within a short time. So it was also easy to communicate. But don't forget that the Chinese that I learned in Taiwan, it wasn't exactly the same pronunciation and the same dialect that I was hearing out in Shenzhen. But it was an amazing adventure. I remember driving through highways without direction because they were not open yet. So people were using the highways, but they were not open. So that on bridges, sometimes we ended up on a dead end. We had to U-turn and go back and to exit the first available place without knowing where we were. And when I say without knowing, I really mean it, because we didn't even have a GPS or something. There were no maps. There was no addresses. Even the factory themselves at that time, they had no powers. And so they were having this generator running out of containers. And even the water was brought in by tanks. And the dormitories, they didn't have public services. So it was, the wild east to me. But something was working, and it was the willingness, the energy, the positive energies of these Chinese entrepreneurs who wanted to succeed, who wanted to learn things and get things done. Now, if I go back 30 years ago and I see these things, obviously a smiles come to my mind. But if we think about today, where we have so many informations, shared information, we have World Wide Web that takes us anywhere. Whatever we need to know, we want to know, we can find it, okay? And we still think that we can go to China without making our own research, then we're making a big mistake. So the opportunity to have business with China, and I repeat, it doesn't matter you want to sell to China or you want to buy from China, the opportunity is there. It's just that we need to really understand how things work. So while you fill up these questions, I think that I may want to introduce to you our special guest, Michael. Michael has been with us. I know Michael for several years now. I met Michael several times in China. I met him. In several places in around the world. I met him in Prague and I met him in London. So I have been listening to Michael many times. And what is amazing about Michael is that he does market research for large corporations. So he is directly linked to the front end. He knows consumers, he understands their habits, and he gives us a why on why they do things in a certain way rather than another. So, Michael, thank you for being here with us. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Alberto and Eva, and as well as your lovely attendees. It's great to be joining you this evening.
So, Michael, would you like to give us a brief introduction about yourself, in addition to what I already said, and tell us more detail, what is your primary job and objective in what you do on your daily life?
Sure. So I'm a consumer researcher in China. So my team and I will do anywhere between 100 to 200 in-person interviews in a given year. And that involves traveling around China across 30 different cities that sit within our research coverage. So we are very active on the front line, and we tend to work with brands that are looking for, one, breakthrough insight into new categories or new developments with the consumer. So the future of mouthwash, for instance, or the future of meal kits in China, as well as validating some options for brands to enter who have a product that's relatively successful overseas, but want to make sure that it connects with the Chinese consumer. And so that's led to some pretty interesting engagements with people like Budweiser, Nestle, Constellation Brands, and others. Today, I'd like to speak to you about some of the things that are important for you to cover off on a research perspective as you consider entering China. I've got my 8 rules, I guess, here for making sure that you've done the work before entering the market.
I think Michael had a problem with his line and he dropped off. So basically, okay, Eva, let's look at the screen. I think something is going on within our question boards and votes. Is that correct?
Yeah, there are a few questions going on here.
All
So
right.
there is one question. Why Alberto
Hold
decided...
on. I got Michael back. Hold on. I want to hear
Yeah,
Michael. Yeah. So let's
cool.
go into Michael. Sorry, Michael. Here you are.
Okay,
Okay.
good.
Sorry, the internet connection isn't great, and so I'm not sure how much your attendees heard. Where did you hear up to, Alberto? Alberto, can you hear me?
Yeah, Michael, I can hear you. Basically, you were just saying that you're on the front line. You know, you do your 300 presentations per year. 300 interviews per year is okay, and you go and analyze why people buy some stuff rather than another. Okay, that's what we heard from you.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, no problems. And what I want to share with your attendees today is a few things that I think are important to cover off as you enter the China market from a research perspective. And so I've got a little list here of 8 things that I think are important to cover off, and I'd like to share those with you today. The first little rule that I have is that the size of the market doesn't tell you everything. A lot of smaller brands that we work with have a nice report from a trade and investment promotion agency like Business Sweden, for example, that says that the market in China for X, Y, and Z product is however many million US dollars or euros. That is not enough. Knowing the size of the market is one part, but it doesn't give you everything. And what it misses out on particularly is the competitive intensity and this idea of product market fit. The second rule, or the second little guideline, is that the right dynamics doesn't always mean that you've got product market fit. So for instance, there was a goat milk brand that we worked with not too long ago that saw a great opportunity in China. China has a large number of lactose intolerant folk, and goat milk is naturally A2, so it is good for people who are lactose intolerant. And so they thought, great, we have a problem, and here we have a solution. But as they entered, what they found increasingly was that the packaging wasn't desirable for the consumer. And so even though theoretically they had a product that met a clear and defined need and all the category dynamics looked good in terms of growth, in terms of competitive intensity, in terms of pace, and as well as the company's own internal capability, they still were unable to be able to find that really nice product market fit because the packaging wasn't appealing to the local consumer. And so this brings me to the third point, which is localization doesn't stop at changing a name or getting a Chinese name. One of the things that I notice about European companies that look to enter the market is Europeans are great at certain types of localization. For instance, if you've got a car accessories company that sells between, let's say, Poland and the Czech Republic, they're quite good at being able to change the language of the labels and maybe adjust to some of the different sales channels between Poland and Czechoslovakia. But what they don't have to do is they don't necessarily have to change the product between markets because you've got a common standard for, let's say, safety or product quality, and you've got a common consumer that looks, feels, and has the same level of need. So Europeans are quite good at that level of localization, but as we find that the next level of localization, actually tailoring a product for a local consumer or going from 0 to 1 to be able to create a new product for the consumer. This is where we see some firms not being able to keep up effectively. And so what I'd like to remind folks is that when we talk about China localization, it doesn't start and end with changing the name of the company and translating some materials. It goes deeper than that. It starts with an understanding of consumer needs and then works backwards from there. The next thing, as you do localization, is be careful of generalizations. As you encounter the market and as you even talk to some folks who are Chinese, you will hear often the phrase, "We Chinese do this," or "We Chinese do that." And as Alberto intimated before, it's very difficult to generalize over the top of 1.4 billion people. And there are some examples where generalizing in this form can catch you off guard. For instance, when I first came to China in 2014, people told me that Chinese would never buy tea bags because Chinese prefer drinking traditional Chinese tea, which is a loose leaf tea. But over the last 5 years, the online sales of tea bags has overtaken the sales of loose leaf tea. And tea bags are quite popular, growing at about 100% over the last 5 years. So year on year, 100% growth over the last 5 years. If you had entertained the idea that Chinese don't drink tea bags and were never in a position to change your mind, you may have missed that particular opportunity. The same goes with meal kits. So a lot of people might say something like, Chinese don't prepare pre-cooked meals. Instead, they prefer to cook fresh. Well, that may be true for some Chinese, but not all. And increasingly, what we're seeing in terms of the delivery companies and in terms of the online grocers is more and more of their sales are coming from meal kits. So 13% of the sales that are from a local online grocer that we're affiliated with come from meal kits. And that's up from 0 pre-pandemic. So again, that length or that rapid change means that sweeping generalizations about what Chinese people do and don't do are a way to trap yourself. A few others before I hand back over to the very capable hands of Alberto and Iva is when we're talking about entry into China, I want you to think of a robust entry case. So identifying the size of the market and the competitive intensity is just part of the puzzle, but thinking about the sales channels, thinking about the distributor margin, thinking about the retailer margin, and being able to have a business case that is honest, intellectually honest, and also is grounded in some realistic assumptions is really important. I understand that post-pandemic, as companies look for new avenues of growth, budget and investment levels, everybody's quite sensitive around these, and so having a good, robust business case is important. As you enter the market, we're thinking about entry. A lot of, whether it's consultancies or market trade and investment promotion agencies will try and say, well, dip your toe in online and see how you go. Online is just one channel. It is, yes, 25% of China's retail sales, but that means that 3 out of every 4 items is bought at a brick and mortar store rather than online. And so when you're thinking about China entry, you have to think about the different entry points. And so online for some is a way to start, but I wouldn't say that it's the end game, and it's certainly not the only way of doing things. And the last two before I end is that speaking of investment, previously one of the chief challenges for European firms in China was a certain level of arrogance. We have a fantastic product from France, and we will be able to sell it with absolute confidence to the Chinese. This was a line that I heard often. And now I think the the issue has shifted. More and more firms are aware of the challenges of selling into China and are aware of that the opportunity is a little bit more crowded than before. And so the main area that I see for improvement is investment levels, giving them a very rosy business case and thinking, oh, it only takes a year to be able to spin up our wheels in China and we will be break even within a year or so. That is not my experience. And so I would encourage you to have a very robust business case. And then the last thing I would say is that it is not mandatory to enter China. When firms are thinking about new avenues for growth, China comes up into the conversation because the world's largest consumer market, and in many product categories, it is growing at least twice the rate of home market. And so they think that they have the answer right there. But I think that the best way to evaluate your options is to evaluate all the potential other markets, whether it's in your home market, whether it's in geographies closer to you or geographies a little bit further away like China, and then be able to have a real, honest, objective assessment of which market is right for you at this stage. And the answer to that question is not necessarily China. And I am just as happy when we tell folks that China is not for them than when we tell folks that China is for them. Because at heart, I don't like to see waste. And if you can do just as well in a neighboring market, that's great, good for you. But if China is the answer and your deep research into consumer needs and the category trajectory and some of the competitive pressures around the category tells you that China is increasingly the answer, and that's great. There are plenty of people to be able to support you, but but let me tell you that it's not the only answer to the question of where do we grow when we're looking at export markets. And so in total, that's my 8 little tips for aspiring entrants into the market.
Excellent, Michael, and thank you very much for your very useful tips. I do have a question for it, okay? And I want to start from your last tip when you mentioned that China is not the only market to enter when you think about expansions abroad, okay? This is so important to understand, and this is so important to underline this concept. But there is also a but, and the but is the Chinese people are everywhere in the world right now, and Chinese are expanding everywhere. So when I think about the China opportunities, I don't always see China as a place to land, and I don't always see as China as a source for the materials, that we're gonna buy. But I see also a way to cooperate with the Chinese, and then to find a match in your own country. So I always, my ending line is, it doesn't matter if you're thinking about entering China or sourcing from China right now, but what it matters is that you're gonna be China ready when they come to you. Think about it. You know nothing about the country. You know nothing about their mentality. You know nothing about what they really do and how they really work. When they come to your country, they look for the excellence of the manufacturing, the distribution, the services, okay? They invest in infrastructure, they invest in a lot of things because they do have the money and they do have the power to do so, okay? If you're not ready to deal with them, it's obviously a lose-win situation where the Chinese win and you will lose, because you will lose your identity, you will lose your control, you will lose your opportunity to deal with them, you will lose everything. So this is my hand in line, the opportunity with China does not end within their territory or within their manufacturing capabilities. The opportunity with China starts with your own assets, what you have, how you have them, and how prepared you are to go and face the Chinese as a group rather than the Chinese as a country. Chinese are the people you're going to deal with at the end of the day, and not the country itself. Do you agree with me?
Yeah, so I certainly think that when you're thinking about your China opportunity, it does help to think about the Chinese diaspora as well as going to China. And before, one of the key ways that people thought about that was in terms of inbound tourists. But now, due to COVID and the restrictions on international travel, there are a number of different players, whether it's tourism destinations or similar parts of that tourism economy and tourism value chain, that have turned their attention towards local Chinese, whether they're living in places like London, whether they're living in places like Milan, whether they're living places in Sydney or Los Angeles. And so that is a part of the picture. Again, understanding the needs of those folks is a little bit different than tourists themselves. And so again, it comes with this, don't paint a broad brush over all of the Chinese. The Chinese living in a place like Sydney, for instance, may have done their high school there, they may have done their university there. They have very different travel needs from somebody who is arriving in Australia for a quick trip across 2 or 3 different cities in a week or so. And so being able to just understand that this is a different market segment that have different needs, and again, you will have to make your proposition appeal to them, I think is perhaps one of the things to bear in mind as you think about thinking about Chinese who are a little bit closer to home.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I do have another question for you, Michael. One of the pain points that I have been going through all of these times, and in particular when I'm traveling around Europe, and even now that with the pandemic situation, there has been this kind of assumption that the COVID-19 was developed in a Chinese laboratory, okay, and I don't believe so. But anyway, there has been some kind of hateness against the wealth distribution situation of the Chinese. So they're everywhere, their products are everywhere. I am staying in Italy right now because I was in Italy during Chinese New Year 2020 when the pandemic came out, and I'm having the restriction of traveling now. So, but anyway, whenever I go around the cities, most of the bars in Italy now are owned by Chinese, and most of the shops, even fashion shops, are owned by Chinese. Okay, so there is this assumption that the Chinese buy everything, and then they tend to do things cheap. Okay, and I always go into a contrast. There is this kind of mixed feelings about it because it's not true. I mean, China is such a huge place, and gives you the opportunity to live the very rich fairy tales as well as the down-to-earth, street food without any limitation. But one thing that the foreigners don't understand, or there is a difficulty to understand, is that the Chinese are not cheap. China is a very expensive place to live. And what Chinese do is that they spend the most of their income, they're not that much as savers, okay? And they like to enjoy life. So if we in the West have situation where the Chinese offer a cheaper products or something that costs less than from a standard shops, is because that's the market demands. Because if a market would ask for higher values and higher quality products, and they would pay for it or they can afford for it, the Chinese would offer that. But since they're asking for cheaper, then they go down the drain line, and then it ends up that there is, Chinese means cheap. But I am a strong believer that this is not the reality, but at least not my reality. In 30 years, I've seen it so often that I can guarantee it. I mean, what's your position on that?
Well, I think that the pattern of development, it strikes me as very similar to Japan and South Korea in terms of the perception of products over time. So for those that are old enough, they will have memories of made in Japan and made in Korea, and the evolution and the arc those particular East Asian nations took from what were considered cheap, inferior goods to goods that have higher and higher added value. And so that, of course, culminates in some of the great Japanese and South Korean brands that we are familiar with today. And yes, there is a consumer electronics skew to some of that sample set, whether it's Samsung or whether it's Sony or Toshiba, what have you. And I think where China will surprise us is that it won't just be in terms of consumer electronics, although there are a number of very, very good Chinese consumer electronics companies, whether it's Xiaomi or DJI, but also we will see across other elements of the economy, whether it's beverages, whether it's toys, whether it's clothing, or whether it's consumer apps, we will see a more holistic, I guess, rise of Chinese firms. And this is something that if you are a student of history, you can anticipate and understand from the development pattern of Japan and South Korea. And so this is where I do think that we will see more and more Chinese innovation, and we will see Chinese firms taking an increasing presence abroad. And I think the best example of this in recent memory is TikTok, and the idea that a Chinese app is able to capture the attention of so many different folks across a number of different countries. It shows that some of the things coming out of China have universal appeal.
Excellent. Excellent. Okay, so I was just looking at some of the comments here, but are coming from YouTube, from LinkedIn, and there is this comments from LinkedIn that says, okay, Chinese as a group, yes, and that is the key to dealing with China as a nation. Thanks, Alberto. That gives me a different perspective and opportunities on my own China questions and interest toward trade with China. Thanks. Thank you very much. I can't see your name, but I'm sure I find it out. Okay. And before I show, Fosco says China sells what customers ask. Correct. You want cheap, you find cheap. You want good quality, you can find good quality. But you cannot expect to buy good quality at rock bottom prices in China anymore. And this is exactly the concept that I try to pass by. And I do have another question for you, Michael. I know your time is very strict, but let me ask you, okay. Your company is called Agency China, okay, and the name says it all, okay, and your company does market research on a vast on the complete territory of China, okay. You have organized these teams of people that goes and sort out selected group of consumers where to ask for questions, okay. So talking about your job, if you consider a country like China with 1.4 billion people, okay, what is the minimal range of people that you need to interview to have a solid opinion or trend in terms of the questions you ask? Would you like to elaborate a bit of your job?
Yeah, sure. So in terms of consumer research, one of the misconceptions that folks have is that everything that you do needs to be statistically significant. And so for in-person research, really what we're trying to understand is we're trying to understand the types of problems, the types of pain points that consumers have, and get a general reading as to the extent to which a certain product or proposition might be able to help with that. And that gives us an ability to be able to get close to the consumer and ask some interesting questions. And then what we do is we validate some of those findings through survey or quantitative methods to be able to give that next level of robustness. So it really is difficult to be able to use one set of data to be able to give brands or to give investors a direction, but we can use multiple sets of data to be able to cross-reference and triangulate some of the things that we see in the field. And so it's not possible to get.
Oh, I think we lost Michael I'm gonna call back Eva to the stream. Eva, here you are back with us. Okay. Michael is in Shanghai, by the way, and he's using a VPN to go through the Great Firewall and to be able to be seen on YouTube and everything. And Michael is back. Okay, let me add him back on the stream. Yeah, you're back, Michael.
Sorry about
It's
that. I
okay.
was just going to say one last thing, and that was that it's difficult to get a precise answer, but what we can do is try and triangulate some different signals to be able to give our clients a general direction on what we're looking at, and really that's what they're looking for. They're not they're not under the impression that you can represent the views of 1.4 billion people, but you can narrow the range of options under consideration with some good in-person research and then validated by some survey approaches that have some statistical significance.
Excellent. Okay, I'm very curious to hear from Eva. What's the situation with the board? Okay, let's see what's going on the board. Eva, go on.
Yes, situation with the board, honestly, is not that active. We have some people on. Activity is not high. I'm capturing thoughts, ideas, and questions as Michael is talking.
Okay.
So they're here.
What you're
notes.
saying is that the board will be available for the people who participate at the presentation of the webinar for further investigation. Okay, fantastic. This is beautiful. I love your facilitating these things because I would have been gone crazy otherwise. Great. Thank you so much. So no questions so far, because let me see. The mandatories. Okay. I don't see any questions. That's okay. Good. Okay. What I wanted to come up with as a solution today for us and see the opportunities behind the China market. As Michael said, China is there. China is not the only market but China is there. It's a potential market for many, many companies, for many, many products, but it's there. One thing that I have noticed recently is the trend for Chinese consumer to buy local products. Is that correct, Michael?
I think so. I think that yes, there is an argument that Chinese consumers are buying more and more domestic brands. But where I differ from other commentators is that reason why they buy. Some people have landed on the conclusion that Chinese buy domestic products because they would like to express their support for local made propositions. And what I would say is that is not what we have observed, whether it is via in-person interviews or surveys. We think that the answer is something closer to that the Chinese brands that they're buying are out-competing their competitors, and they're just good brands, full stop. It's not about the brand's Chineseness. It is that the brand is doing a good job appealing to consumers and providing the right level of value at the right price. And we think that is the better way of looking at it, rather than saying that local consumers are buying local made because they're patriots or these sort of things.
Okay, great. Let me ask you one thing. Last time we met each other in Shanghai, we went having a coffee, and we drank a coffee at Luckin Coffee. And before going there, we were doubting, okay, should we go Luckin Coffee or should we just go around the corner with Starbucks? Okay, so coffee is a point. But what happened after, Luckin Coffee with their numbers, have been exploited, and they got off of the stock market because of the scandals of fake accountability. I was expecting the market to punish them. But instead, they were not punished by the market. And what happened is that the market supported them, in China at least. Now, I know you have been predicting this quite long before it all happens. I mean, you were adding up the numbers and you couldn't figure out what was right or wrong. Okay, but you sensed it. You had this situation where you said, yeah, these things are not going to be right. Okay, but at that time, okay, when all things came up and then the Chinese consumers supported the company, what is it that really happened under your point of view?
So when we're looking at Luckin, I think that the model of small cafes that you pick up from, and small cafe means that you save on rent and you can reinvest the savings in cheaper coffee. I think that model works. And indeed, since Luckin has came onto the scene, there's been other imitators that have followed that exact same model to some success. Where Luckin fell off the rails was that they wanted to tell this story of challenging Starbucks by being the number one by number of stores. And that was disastrous for sales because they were selling in places that didn't have demand. And ultimately, that pressure led to fraud. And this is one of the things that I think relates to the earlier conversation that we were having. When you're thinking about entering the market, you need to be realistic. And even local players sometimes aren't realistic about their expectations of the market and what the market is able to support. So being able to validate that demand is there and then being smart about how you deploy resources to be able to take advantage of that demand are core competencies, and it's something that everybody needs to learn. And so that's my read of the situation.
Okay, good. Thank you. And one question. I usually, I have a master class which is called China Business Strategy, and it went over onto university courses around Europe. Okay, but one question I always ask it to my students is, okay, figure it out. There is a street in China with two shops that sell exactly the same products. Typically, some cakes and some ice creams, some bubble teas. One shop has a very long queue, and the other shop has only a couple of people in front of it, okay? So if I show you these pictures, and I pretty much consider that anybody can figure it out, okay? If I show you this picture, what would you think about it?
Me personally?
Yes, of course.
I've been in the market long enough that there are two answers that pop into my head at that time. Either the store that is more popular is a better place to take photos, and so it offers more than the product, or alternatively, that the place that is more popular has paid for people to stand in front of the store to be able to create demand and interest in the proposition. And so that is my answer after being in market long enough to appreciate that particular question, which is a nice way of thinking about it, as a way to be able to test your understanding of how you think about consumer and business phenomena overseas, as opposed to how you might think about it in China. It's a nice test. I like it as a question. It's a good one.
Thank you so much. And you know what? Every time I ask these questions, everybody, 99.9% of the people always reply to me, oh, their products are better taste. They have a cheaper price, or they have a better offer. Okay. So basically living in China, we kind of figured out what the situation is. Okay. I remember in one of our private conversations some times ago, okay, we were talking about what happened to Dolce Gabbana. No need to remember, but for the people who are listening to us, Dolce Gabbana in November 2018, they were supposed to have a very big show, the greatest show in Shanghai. They were talking about $20 million investment just to introduce this new product line, this new season of her dresses, okay? And then they made an infamous series of videos with the Chinese female Chinese characters and some oversized Italian food. With a commentator that was complaining on the way that the Chinese character wasn't able to basically eat the food itself. So what happened is that one night by the other, okay, everything disappeared. Dolce Gabbana had to close the shop. You know, they were not more reachable on the servers, on the marketplaces. Even if you look for their name on Baidu, they were not listed anymore. And so far, they're not still there. Okay, I was reading recently about an Hong Kong singer, which Karen Mock, okay, that was dressed in a Dolce & Gabbana dress during one of her latest videos, which just came out publicly a few days ago. And immediately people noticed that she was dressed in DNG, and they start complaining to her that that was not polite to the Chinese people. So what happened is, even during a press conference, there was this questions in Cantonese to her, and she replied directly in Mandarin, just to show the appreciation to the country, and said sorry. It just skipped my mind. I just didn't realize that I was wearing a DNG suit for the shooting of the video. Okay, so beside the fact that DNG have made it wrong and worse, and they went downhill, you know, for many reasons. Okay, what do you think about Karen Mock attitude? Was it necessary to apologize, or was it just a dress like any other dress?
Well, I think that the simple rule here is that if you are a celebrity that has commercial interests in mainland China, then you need to be aware of sensitivities. And those sensitivities are cultural. So, for instance, there are cultural do's and don'ts. And increasingly, some of those sensitivities are of political nature. And this is a compromise that some will need to make for continued engagement with China. And if you're a celebrity with commercial interests in China, let's say Kim Kardashian, for instance, somebody who's a little bit outside the immediate geography of China, but has a following in China and has continuing business activities that relate to the China market, then those sensitivities should be taken into account as you continue to go forward. And that may involve decisions about whether or not you engage with Dolce & Gabbana or the NBA or other organizations that, through the recent, I guess, spate of incidents, have annoyed or aggrieved certain segments of China's population. And so that is putting those two things together. If you have commercial interests and if you have a continuing interest in conducting business in China, then that leads to compromises. And then whether those compromises accord with your own set of values, that is a question for you to answer. It is not a question for me to answer. And so that is one of the things that you need to take into consideration as you chart your continued course with engagement with China. That's a values question that only you can answer.
Excellent. I think you got the point. And yes, I do think, my personal opinion, and I like also to ask Eva what she thinks about. My personal opinion is that Karen Mock did the right thing. She addressed it straight to the audience that she cared most at that moment and said, I'm sorry, I made a mistake. I mean, it doesn't take much to be aware of their own mistakes, but it makes a lot of difference to people. And definitely, this is obviously my personal opinion. Eva, what's your opinion about it?
I agree with you, Alberto. And personally, I had many such situations where sensitivities in China were not something familiar to me, because I landed there without knowing much about the country and the culture and the language itself. So through the years, I had to learn that the best way to address the sensitivity is to be honest right there and then. So if you're asked to explain yourself, it's important just to honestly say where you're coming from. And that is really good to keep what we say in China, mianzi. And I think we also have a question about mianzi in the chat as well.
All right,
So I think
I see it. Okay.
that was a very good connection point here. I also want to mention, Alberto, that we have a very interesting question here on Mural from the guest, which is how Western brands can ensure their relevance in such fast-moving consumer market.
All right, let me show the screen. Okay, where is the questions on Miro? Okay, how Western brands can ensure the relevance in such a fast-moving consumer market? Yep. Michael, would you like to answer this?
So without talking my own book too much, I think the answer to this particular question is quite clear, and it involves consumer research. One of the things that your organization needs to do when it is in China or outside of China is that it needs a research agenda. You need some things that you are thinking about each year. So, for instance, to give you an example, if let's say we're working for Red Bull, maybe one of the things in our 2021 research agenda is how much do consumers care about no sugar and sugar in their drinks. That's one of the things that we've identified as a shift towards health, and this is a particular key business consideration for us. And then, of course, you have a list of these things that you want to find out, and you keep working on your list every year such that you are able to identify some of the business issues that you are maybe facing currently, as well as anticipate some of the business issues that may be on the horizon. So, for instance, an increasing preference towards no sugar or low sugar beverages, and then be able to research accordingly such that you are, best case scenario, ahead of the curve and making some tough decisions before it starts showing up in your sales figures. Or alternatively, worst case scenario, you are able to catch it just as it starts to impact your sales figures, and you've still got time to be able to react accordingly. And so a research agenda that looks at, okay, what are the moving parts of the consumer landscape? What do I need to try and figure out? What's important for my business? If you're able to get good answers to those three questions and then form a laundry list of things that you'd like to find out each year, I think that's a great way of staying in touch. I don't think it's as simple as buying some consumer reports every now and then. You need to take the initiative and have a research agenda at your firm. Your firm needs to be a learning organization and try and learn new things while getting rid of some assumptions and some practices that may be outdated or ill-suited for the environment that you find yourself in. And that's good advice whether you're in China or outside China.
Excellent. I have one thing to say about it is do your homework. I mean, guys, you really need to do your homework. I mean, entering China is just like entering a completely different reality. And if you don't do your homework, if you don't put yourself on a parallel thinking mode, then you will never be able to master and overcome all the issues that may face during your market expansions. Okay, so definitely yes. Thank you, Michaels. Eva, what else would you like to share with us?
We have another interesting question here on Miro.
Okay.
And it says, do a foreign businesswoman in China have to deal with politicians? And if yes, to what degree of implication?
Oh, that's an interesting question. Well, first of all, business men or women, but let's talk about businesswomen. Businesswomen in China, Chinese businesswomen are cool. I mean, they are tougher than men. They are more determined. They have more, dedications, and they are score oriented. I mean, it's so much easier to find a very excellent Chinese businesswoman than a man counterpart. And this is the very first things I want to say. I mean, every time I had to deal with a Chinese woman in business and she was a boss, I really had much more difficulties than just handling the same kind of bargaining with the businessman. And then, yes, I mean, politics is an issue somehow, but it is more, and this is again my personal opinion, it is an issue for us foreigners, because we see politics as something that goes, along with the results of your everything. So everything is so bureaucratically organized or disorganized in the West, where everything goes like, yeah, if it is raining, it's the government that is doing bad things. Okay, if it is not making any profit, your business, then it's still again is the government's fault. Okay, and what I realized is that in China things work differently. First of all, and I don't want to talk about politics, I'm talking about methodology. First of all, China is a place where there is only one representative party that goes to the government. But before getting to the top level of the government, there is a very big selection. And the process to enter the party is very, very difficult. I mean, if you got something to say, you got to prove that you are validated to say so. So the people who are in the party are people who are usually having 2 or 3 master degrees, university degrees, PhDs, experience for many years, and business success and business records that really put them above all the others. And so they are selected to be within, and they can express their opinion about it. So what happened in a democracy where everybody can vote, basically the same things happen within the party. The party has, I guess, 60 million party members, and then they go down to 600 members in the Politburo, but they go to the government. But before going through all the way, there is a big selection. So not everybody can say what they think, only the selected one can express their opinion. Okay, and by this, it means that they need to have a proven record of being able to understand, interact, and comment things, not just by an opinion, but it has to be proven records of their capabilities. Now, say this, it makes democracy looks like a kindergarten. Who want a candy? Yeah, I want a candy, and so on. So it's a complete different approach. So yes, you may have to deal with the politics, but you don't have to fall into the gap of politics. Politics is out of your business until you get too strong. And we all see what happened to Mr. Ma, Jack Ma, who is the owner of the founder of Alibaba. Okay, got too strong and started to express too many opinions outside the lines because he really could control over too much power with this company. And so they basically, invited him to respect his position and stay put where he is. And I'm not going to talk about politics anymore. Michael, you wanna add something about this?
So in terms of doing business in China and whether you need to interface with politicians, I think that there are, I guess, 2 factors that determine that. The first is the industry that you're in. So for instance, if you are selling medical devices into China, there is a high level of government interaction, whether it is with regulators, whether it is with local, provincial authorities that are responsible for healthcare implementation, and then depending on the scale of your sales in China, how many provinces you're dealing with, how many layers of the healthcare system you're dealing with, that's a scale question. So it's the 2 things, it's industry times scale, I think are determining factors into whether or not you need to interface with politicians in China.
Excellent. Excellent. Okay, so we got another questions from, I think we're losing Michael again. Okay, so here we are. All right. So we got another question from Fosco Baciglia. Fosco says, many economists are predicting there will soon be a strong decoupling to avoid being dependent on China market. Do you think this is going to happen massively? Thanks to all of you guys. Okay. Thank you, Fosco, for your question. Oh, I mean, yesterday there was this G7 party going on in England, in UK, and I think what the answer to this is the pictures that I saw today on local papers in China, where basically a Chinese artist reproduced the Last Supper from Leonardo da Vinci, and then he put Jesus Christ like the American Eagles, and then he put the UK like what was it, the fox, and then he put the Italians as a wolf, that they were the first one to sign for the Belt and Road initiatives, and so on. So again, politics. I don't want to talk about politics, but yes, there will be some sort of situations going on, but the fact will speak. I mean, they will talk, and the fact will speak. China is a fact, is not a talk. And when you talk, when we think about China and see what they do, how they do it. I mean, they're on Mars. I mean, they can control. They do anything. They have the power. They are more intelligent. They're smarter than us. They're richer than us, and they're faster than us. And if you follow us on the next webinars to come, where we talk about mindset and strategy, I'll go deep into these details and let you understand how differently they act and why they act so differently and why they can do so. So, Fosco, let's talk about this next time. It will be next week, next Tuesday, same time, same channels. Okay. So then I see another comment from Catherine. Catherine says, it's often really hard to explain to European companies why they need to do consumer research every year, as they don't believe the expenses is justified. Market changes faster than they expect. Exactly, Catherine. I mean, you name it. It's so difficult to let them understand the situation and to let them get the view of what real the market is. And investing, for instance, on a market research with Michael's agency, you know, it was a few $1,000s that will make you avoid losing tenth or hundreds of thousands of dollars of your investment within the next few years. So market research is the homework, and the homework is the answer. Okay, let's go on. I think I see all the questions already answered. There is a new good vibes, okay, from Fosco. Thank you, Fosco. And Gualtiero also say, bravissimo, Alberto. Thank you, Gualtiero. We all love you. and yes, Eva, it's your turn to speak. Would you like to show us what's the situation? Would you like to talk about this?
So I think, Alberto, it's time to kind of wrap it up and talk about, you know, the final thoughts here that you had on your slide is, and the final question is China really a milking cow, right?
I love the slides. I love the slides. The first time I presented the slides, it was a few years ago in Sydney on a very nice stage at Starcom, and with a lot of people, and they were not expecting such a slides, you know, because they are also full of cows. And okay, I'd like to have people to answer this question. Is China a milking cow? Let's see what your thoughts are, okay? This is my question to you, and I love to see some of the comments on the thought sessions of our mirror board, or you can easily make a comments on Facebook, on YouTube, or on LinkedIn, because I see that we get all of the comments going on. So let's wait for the answer to these. Okay, Eva, would you like to add any other point that maybe I missed from Michael? Would you like to underline something or comment some of what Michael said?
I would just like to amplify what you said based on Michael's work. A few $1,000s can save hundreds if you are strategic about understanding people's needs. And we are not talking about any kind of people. We are looking here from a business perspective on China. So any company not doing strategic research and being a learning organization will not succeed in business. But in China, the situation is very, very specific because of all the components that you mentioned, Alberto. They have power, they have money, they have speed, they have technology, they have industry, and all the other support needed.
They have brain. You know what I can say, and I say this with a very, very serious consciousness. Okay, Chinese, they don't think like us. Chinese, they are faster thinking, lateral thinking, out of the box. They are so much focused, so much oriented. I remember, I living in Taipei back in the 90s. Living in Taipei, I was living on the top floor in a penthouse of a big building, but it was an important building at that time. Even the son of the president of the republic was living there, and one of the guys on the lower floors, he had a shop. He had a computer shops in the computer area in Taipei. And every time, on Sunday, Saturday, when I had nothing to do, I was, wandering around the streets just to see if there was new products, if there was a new technology, if there was something I could have bought and brought back to study how to implement it or sell it or propose it to my customers. Okay. And one day I don't see him anymore at the shop. So I thought he sold the shop. But instead, the shop was closed. Okay, so I go like, so what's going on? And then a few days after, then the shop turned it into an ice cream shop. And I say, and there was him behind the shop. And I go like, what's going on? I mean, Tom, why did you change your job? I mean, wasn't your computer shop doing good business? And he said, oh yeah, it was doing a great business. So why did you change? I mean, you are so good at what you do. And he said, yes, but ice cream make more money. And I was like, fantastic. This is exactly what I need to know. I mean, there was nothing concerning the product kind. It was just focusing on the business. His goal was to get more money. So he changed these beautiful shops with the years and years of experience and customer that would go there and queue up just to buy products from him. And he would simply sell ice cream. I mean, this is their mentality. Perfect is never fast enough in China. Perfect is something that we think, oh, we should do this, we should do that. For instance, Eva, how long did it take for us to put up the seminar with webinar? When did we start to talk about it?
I would say 4 weeks ago.
Exactly, 4 weeks ago. And we had to learn everything. We had to learn from the scratch. I mean, we didn't even know if the lighting was going to be good or if the tools we were going to use were good enough. So anyway, we tried to be fast. But if you would have done it with the Chinese, the day after, you would have gone live. Why? Because that's how it works, And in particular, today, live streaming is the answer to many commercial issues. So think about it. We're going to talk in the next few webinars, and we will talk also about live streaming. Now, I see a comment from Patrick. Let's show the comment. Okay, so Patrick says, launching new worldwide app with Chinese cultural aspect, how to protect the IPR, and will a Chinese partner be required? Well, Patrick, thank you for your question. a worldwide app with Chinese cultural aspect. Okay, so first of all, there is not such a thing as a worldwide app. There is an app for the Western world, and there is going to be an app for China. Okay, in China, things work differently. They don't use app; they use integration within their own um, products. Okay, so there are, there is an ecosystem which is called BATB. Okay, which is Baidu, Alibaba, Tencent, and ByteDance. So this ecosystem basically control 80% of the applications in China, and they all go the same direction, creating an ecosystem within their own product and services. So they do handle everything within them. And then you need to work vertically with each of these four companies to see how to integrate your services or app within their ecosystem. So it's a little bit complicated. But we will talk more about this on the other when we talk about marketing and stuff. But the answer to your questions, how to protect IPR, well, China has done great steps into protecting the intellectual properties. Intellectual properties law is now comparable to the Western one. So if you have an idea, a brand, a design, and you want a concept and you want to protect it, you can go even with a foreign company and through the local authorities in China, and they can just simply deposit the patent, and then you will be protected. That means that if any Chinese try to copy your idea, your product, your design, okay, will be locally pursued by law, and if you're right, the Chinese will be forced to stop selling or doing or servicing the same idea, product, or design that you have protected. So it's the best investment if you want to protect your IP. Otherwise, if you don't believe in IP protection, just go with a trade secret. I mean, industry secret, but still works. So you don't have to tell people what to do. But consider that there will not be, my opinion, there will not be a product, Patrick, that will works in the West as much as in China. Need to be two different products with two different approaches. Now, I don't know what you want to do, but that's my 2 cents. Okay. Ariane,
Alberto,
she said that she is living.
Alberto?
So go ahead. Sorry.
We are closing up soon. It's 90 minutes.
All right.
I would just like to wrap up with the thoughts from the Miro board.
Mm-hmm.
So the question
Okay,
is China a milking cow? So to actually conclude this webinar, I think we have a perfect summary from Catherine. And she says it's a risky attitude to take, not likely to work well in the long term, and you have to see China as a long-term business.
Good. Okay, so
and the second one we have, you can earn good money in China, but not take advantage of them. If China feels you're trying this, they will crush you.
Good. Okay, both right, and I agree with both of you. And so my answer to your question is China a milking cow? My answer is China is not a milking cow yet. China is a calf, is a little baby cow, but need to be fed a lot and need to be taken care. Only in that way you can grow together and one day start to milk. But today you need to feed China. And that's why entering China, it's a very long-term project. It's not a short-term one. It takes at least 3 years before you can see a minimal return of investment. And it takes time for people to know you. It takes time for people to understand who you are, what you do, and to start talking about who you are and what you do. And only then you can start saying, China is a market where I'm seeing profits. Before that, guys, it will be just a pain and expensive. But that's a thing worth trying. Trust me. I've been going through many up and downs in China. It's been a roller coaster trip, but yes, I am so much positive about it. Really, so much positive. Okay, so everything
It's
is
time to
done.
wrap up.
We got everything covered. I think we will have a recording of the event. It's been great. Thank you, Eva, facilitating it. I love it. I love your job. I love what you do. And thanks. Michael is not with us anymore, Michael, but I'm sure he will. Hear our appreciation for what he has given and shared with us. I've known Michael for many years, and is a great guy. He is Agency China. You can find him on LinkedIn if you want to contact him directly. If you need to talk and understand more about the Chinese market and how to plan your strategy, we are here. Eva and I are here to help you. Eva, 15-year experience studying and living and working and doing business in China. Me, everything else. We have been really good being with you. Thank you for your questions. Many interesting questions. I really appreciate it. The time is to go. Thank you, everybody. Have a pleasant
Thank you,
day.
everyone.
Ciao.
Thank you, Alberto. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you,
Ciao.
Eva. Ciao, 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 everybody.